What's up YouTube? My name's Quickie, welcome back to the channel. If the dog starts hooting again, I'm going to turn it into a rug. I've decided. Will not shut up. I've been feeding it treats and it's still going on because it wants more. Anyway, I should be at my work, but I'm not. If I'm not there, I should be in my shop, and I'm not there either. I'm at home at the minute. I'm supposed to be doing a 7 till 7 shift this week. You know, to fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge and get some training done and all that. Well, there's loads of cocking about and monkeying about, so I'm not doing that anymore. I'm back on my original shift. However, it does mean I got a little bit of time this morning. So I thought I would do this video because over the last 6 months I've probably had, I don't know, 35 plus people get in touch about this. And I've also had a blast from the past as well, and it just, all the timing came together and it's the perfect time to do it just because this lot has turned up. So anyway, all these people are getting in touch going, well, you used to race and do track days and stuff like that. I want to do track days, so I'm thinking about going racing. How do you set up a team? Who do you join? Who do you pay? What do I do? How do I prep the bike? All that sort of stuff. And it was a video that I was going to do when we came to doing the SRAD that I got from Taz up in Norfolk, because that is going to be turned into just an out-and-out track bike, and it'll be done on a budget, which we'll all be covering. But then a couple of days ago, hang on, let me move over here so you can see it. A couple of days ago, this fella got in touch. That's Sol. He's a mate from mine from back in the day, and that picture is definitely back in the day because we both, you know, well, a little bit older. But he got back in touch with me and he goes, mate, I've just found this video from Vimeo, and it's basically shot from back in the day when we set up a bike team. And an awful lot of memories come flooding back when I watched it. And I thought, that's it, that's the perfect stuff to use because, well, you'll see in a minute. But it kind of explains everything. I've just got to tell you what's going on and hopefully fill in a few blanks. So anyway, if you see this is basically filmed in HD. It's either HD, I think, at the minute because I'm on the front facing camera, but normally it's all done in 4K. And the videos that I do, it's all in 4K. So this picture, filmed off my phone, completely fills the screen. And that's how I do the video editing. I use Premiere Pro. But if I take the footage that he gave me and stick it in there, this is how big it comes up. Look at that, that's tiny, that's a thumbnail. That's not even a thumbnail. So it took me probably about an hour, but eventually I got to the point where, you know, sort of expanding it, taking the grain out, taking the noise out, smoothing it, then sharpening it, then a high pass filter, then this, that and the other. Eventually I ended up with some footage that I think we can actually view and use and all the rest of it. But there you go, that's just what it is. So what you're looking at now is basically some footage from a track day. This one's a cowboy part, and this is how it starts out for most people. You just take your road bike or a track bike if you're lucky enough to have one. Basically something you don't really care too much about, and you just go hooning around a racetrack with it. You know, there's all sorts of, normally they do like a slow, medium and fast group, and you pick the one that you're kind of the right sort of pace for. But have a right laugh because, you know, there's no oncoming traffic, there's no idiots stepping out from behind cars, there's no PC plod with a camera or any of that sort of stuff trying to nick you for doing above the speed limit. It's just having a hoon. And that is basically what bikes is all about. Well, it was in my book. I was basically, I had an R1 at the time, and I was getting quicker and quicker on it because, you know, it's an R1 and that's the year they all came out. And you get to the point where you just think this is getting silly, it needs to go on track. So, you know, because someone's going to get hurt in a minute. So we started doing track days and whatnot, and basically we just started making mates. So here's some fellas from back in the day. Sol is the guy on the left. That's me with the hat on backwards, no surprise there. And Jason, the fellow on the end is James Denning. You see we've all got rookie bibs on. I think this would have been, I think this was, where would this have been? I want to say it's I don't know, I can't remember what track it is. But anyway, we did some instruction on these track days just because we was getting a bit quick and whatnot. And I think at the time when this photo was taken, we was racing as well, so we all had rookie bibs and whatnot. And that's where it was. But you started making some really, really, really good friends. You know, we just spent as much time as we possibly could do on track. And then once you get your head around it and you learn the racing line and you got your bike set up properly and all this sort of stuff, you can actually put some decent times together. If you go back and have a look at the footage of people just wobbling around, that's how a lot of people start, and it doesn't take you long to get to this sort of level. So, you know, it's white line to white line, and you're on the racing line, and you're giving it large, and it's like controlled panic brake. The biggest thing is just to learn throttle control, basically. But it doesn't actually take that long for your skill level to come creeping up to the point where you're one of the quicker people on a track day. It really doesn't. Stuff starts making sense, and you know, you just start picking the pace up and getting to it, and you know, having a crack and all that sort of thing. And you do get to the point where you're like one of the quicker ones. It's like, right, okay, what am I going to do now? Let's go racing. I'm just going to win everything. Honda will be phoning me up, begging me to come and race MotoGP. I'm going to do that. No, they won't. Trust me, they won't. So anyway, you get to the point of like you're the quick fella on the track day. And then you go, right, that's it, I'm going racing. So you get yourself a proper track bike. And this was my first one. This was my ZXR. And it was all prepped by myself. I met Spike from Cambridge Motorcycles because he did some wiring work and a few other bits and pieces on this, and just give the engine a once over and everything else. But that was my first track bike, and I went into the rookie 600s on that particular one, and we had like a proper laugh. Learn loads and loads. This is Cadwell Park. Giving it large because you know the photographer's going to be there. That's Brantat. Just see, I can remember all the corners and what they look like. And this is the group of lads that I was hanging out with. So left to right, Neil Ronchetti, James Denning, Simon Oliver, and my good self with hair and a belly on the end. I honestly thought those friendships would just last a lifetime. They didn't, but you know, it's good whilst it lasted. And then after the first year and getting dead friendly and whatnot, Sol and myself decided that's it, we're going to set up a 2-bike team. So we went to each of our companies. I worked for UUNet at the time. He worked for Nortel Networks, and we set up a 2-bike team using R6s because they was the quick bikes to have. I bought this wagon as a race transporter. It was painted and liveried up and everything else, and you know, they got us some jackets to wear with the logo on the back, and that's it. So we got these bikes and we went testing, and this footage is actually from the first test session that we had at Mallory Park after we built the bikes. So we spent the winter sort of pulling all the road bits off, sticking them on eBay, getting rid of everything that we could, and then we bought the race plastics and an exhaust system and, you know, tyres, all that sort of stuff. Basically binned off everything that didn't make the bike go faster or turn better or handle better or stop better, and we just got rid of that and we made it as light as we possibly could do, and these are the bikes that we turned up with. I think the fella with the camera following us, that's James. He went and got himself an ex-national bike. So basically there was already people racing in the national championships and everything else. He found a bike that did really, really, really well in the championship, and he just went and bought it. So at the end of the last round, as it comes into the pit lanes, a good tip is just go, as soon as it comes into the pits, just go and sit on it and go, it's mine now, because then they won't take any of the funky bits off of it. But he came out and he followed us on this test session, the shakedown run, just because we wanted to see, you know, was there anything weird going on with the bike? Was there anything loose? Did it hold a line? We could go back and check stuff and see what's what. He was quicker than, I mean, James did really well. He got like second in the Bemsee Championship, I think, at the time. Simon Oliver, who's just come in front of him there, he was my teammate. He was quicker than me as well. I mean, I still did all right. I still, won a few trophies and stuff. But these boys was always quicker than me. There's always going to be someone quicker. You can see there that it all sort of jumps in and it zooms in. You're never going to believe why. Like right-handed corners it tends to zoom in and left-handed corners it tends to zoom out. Well, that's because all the footage that we took, we didn't have bullet cams or GoPros or anything else like that at the time. I had one of these. I had a handicap. It was dead good. It was digital. It wasn't a VHS that took a cassette that big. The cassette was like that big. And we just used to duct tape it to the top of the tank. Literally. And where you zoom in and out, it was like a little rocker switch that you did with your finger like that. So as he's shifting his weight from left to right, he just zooms in and zooms back out again. That's why it's all changing about. The marshals really didn't care. Scrutineering, this is Mallory Park on a test day. And they really didn't give a monkeys either. As long as, there wasn't even scrutineering. As long as you turned up with your ACU licence, paid them 25 quid, you could go hooning all day. And if there weren't that many of you, it was just an open track all day. I'm not sure if Mallory Park still do that, but that's where we used to go, because that's in Leicestershire and we was in Cambridgeshire and it's not that far away, basically. So anyway, here we're just sort of getting used to stuff and having a bit of a laugh. We went out on quite a few changes. The first time out it was horrible. I mean, like, it was properly horrible. Where we took all the weight off the road bike and binned it off, we set everything back as it was on the road bike. The trouble is the front is now an awful lot lighter. That's why that session was cut short. What we found is that you come around a corner, you absolutely give it large, and all the weight is transferred to the back. The front is now too light, and you just go down the front straight like this. So you do have to, if you're going to take a road bike and turn it into a race bike, you do have to measure rake and trail, and you have to set it back as it was, which normally means dropping the yokes down the forks. I think we did something like 20 mil on these in the end. Like, it was just, like you can see on James's bike, it's a Honda CBR 600. Look how much of the fork is sticking up through the yoke. That's mad, isn't it? But anyway, we got them in the ballpark. They weren't perfect. And then we just went out and started leaning on them, trying to check it was all good. So that's me up front with the Chris Walker lid there. Solly's on the right. You'll see quite a bit of him, actually. And we just, we'd been around Mallory Park a few times. We sort of knew the lines. But, you get other traffic there and it's just like, no, I'm getting past. So you completely go offline, and it's just, we were still learning the trade at this point. But it was a good laugh. It was a proper laugh. You cannot have as much fun and keep your trousers on. I guarantee it. And we just started getting quicker and quicker. So you go out initially and it's just like bed the tyres in because they was all new. Bed your brakes in because they're just brand spanking new. And you've never been on the bike before. So you gradually start to ramp it up. And if you've got a bike, especially if you've converted yourself, I would seriously just suggest doing that. Don't go out and just go hell for leather. There is no point. You will just bin it. Just start at like 60-70% and just start working up. And it's a really good thing to do as well, just because it's not all frantic, just hanging on for grim death and think you're amazing and that's the quickest that you're ever going to go, because you can't take all that information in. Whereas if you go at a slower pace and just start to build it, you've got time to think about stuff as it's happening. So you can, well, the bike's drifting wide. Why is it drifting wide? Right, next time round I'm gonna have a go and try and keep it in a bit. And if I can, then it's obviously me. And if I can't, then there's something up with the bike and we need to get changed. And it's that sort of stuff. You can do things at a pace that you can learn. And it didn't actually take us that long to get the bike, so we was happy with it. And we always went to Mallory for the testing, just because you can hit the same number of corners, maybe different conditions, but you can hit the same corners every time. and you can start getting some consistency. If the bike, if something happens on one lap, like you run wide, but on the next lap you don't, the bike is a machine. It only does what it's asked to do. So if it's different, it's you that's different. It's you that's doing it. Maybe you're wide on one lap and not on another, or you took a slightly different line, or you braked in a different place, or something like that. That's you. That's not the bike. The bike will only do the same thing every single time because it is a machine. But it don't take long, and you sort of get to the point. This footage is from Snetterton, and it's the old track. They changed it when his nibs went and bought, all the racetracks and stuff up. What was his name? I can't remember. The ex-Formula 1 fella. Jonathan Palmer, that's it. He just went and bought a load of racetracks and then went and changed them. But this is Snetterton, and this is kind of cool. Snetterton has got the longest straight in the UK. It's the Rivet Straight, and you're on it at the minute. I swear to God, if you stand at one end, you can see Tibet at the other end. It's massive. But we got to the point where the bikes was actually handling really, really quite well. At this point, we was racing for Bemsee, which is basically a club championship. It's the oldest motorcycle racing club in the world, and it's one of the biggest in the UK. But it is a really, really, really good club. It's well run, and if you can do well there, you're actually doing really well. There's no slow fellas in it. It has to be said. And Snetterton, being in Norfolk, was quite close as well. So we used to hit Mallory in Leicestershire and Snetterton in Norfolk just because they were the local ones, and we got to know them really well, and we could just bang out laps and do some proper testing. You're gonna see when we get to the S-Rad what I'm gonna do to prepare the bike and stuff for the racetrack. Matt from the workshop, he's doing one at the minute. He's doing an SV, and that should actually be quite a cool bike actually. But sorry, you fell over, crashed and burnt. You lost it. Well, you're propped up on a bag at the minute. There's no surprises there. But anyway, yeah, we was racing for Bemsee. So once you've done your track days and once you've got your bike sorted and various other bits and pieces, you can club racing is the way to go. We raced with Bemsee, so the British Motorcycle Racing Club. I'm not sure where it's based now. It used to be based at Lyddon Hill, which is a circuit in Kent. I think they've moved since now, but they've got a website and everything else. If I can find it, I'll shove a link. There's quite a few clubs that you can join and just go racing with, and they've got different classes. So you can, if you've got like a road bike that you're going to convert, well, you just get in touch with the club going, I've got this thing. What is it eligible for? They'll tell you the classes, and they'll also give you the specs and everything else that you can build it to. So do you have to run treaded tyres, or can you run slicks? Are you allowed to change suspension? All that sort of stuff. They'll tell you what you can do. You probably can't turbo it or supercharge it or nitrous it, just so you know. But it's quite cool, and they'll give you the specs that you can build the bike to. And that is pretty much what we're going to be doing with the S-Rad. Like the Rookie 600s, for example. I mean, like modern day bikes, it's just going to walk all over the S-Rad, but we'll prepare it to the same sort of level. It's just that it's not going to be as quick or as powerful because it's really old. But we should still have a right laugh as well. And that's literally all we did with these R6s. Sorry, I'll move over here again. And they did turn out to be really good handling bikes. You haven't got to be a mechanic to do it. You don't need to tune the shiznick out of a machine or anything else. You really, really don't. We sort of moved up in classes after this as well. So I went from that to a Ducati 916 that I bought off James, and I ran that in with Bemsee as well in a different championship, in a different class rather. And then staying in the same championship, we moved on to the Aprilia RS3 R1000. So it don't really matter what sort of bike you've got or what class that you're racing in. There's always going to be a stepping stone, and I can tell you now as well, there's always going to be a quicker fella too. You never stop learning on this stuff. You have your good days and your bad days. You will crash, that's to be expected, But you know, you can take a standard bike and turn it into something which is actually really capable, and it's more about learning how to ride it and learning the tracks and learning how to set it up and learning where to spend your money, because we spent a fortune on stuff that we shouldn't have done. It does cost a fortune. It will sap every penny that you've got and then some. But you know, we didn't care. We was younger. We was in good jobs. We had the money to do it, so we just went and did it. Basically, a lot of the fellas you'll find they're either in the trade like mechanics or something like this, or they've got a really good job and they can afford to get somebody to do all the donkey work for them. But yeah, that was it. So these were the R6s that we was running in the Super Sport 600 class with Bemsee, having just done the rookie year. You can see we're out of the rookie year because we haven't got the orange bibs on. Those leathers are the ones that you see hanging up in the garage as well. You know, in the workshop, they've just got a different logo on the back of them. But anyway, so some of the mistakes that we made. One, we bought brand new bikes to set this team up because we were sponsored for this year. I wouldn't do that because you are going to crash it. Just get an old bike. There's no point getting a new one. The other thing is we just went chasing horsepower. We shouldn't have done that. We was all about tuning the shiznick out the thing. There's no replacement for displacement, as some quick fella once said. Was it Kenny Roberts or something? Yeah, he's wrong. Sorry, Kenny, but you just are. If we was to do this differently, well, if I was to do it again, which we actually, with the S-Rad, this is what we're going to do. The stock 600 makes more than enough power for both the road and the track, if I'm honest, because you can grab these by the scruff of the neck and chuck them about, like properly chuck them about. And I think somebody has some data logging or something. Snetterton, which has got the fastest straight in the UK on it, plus a few twisty bits and everything else. According to data logging, it was something like you are on max throttle, fully pinned open, for something like a third of a lap, like, you know, 33%, something like that. So for the majority of the lap, you're not even on full throttle. So you don't need to have the maximum amount of power. You need, because you're only on it for a third of the lap. Stuff to concentrate on is the twisty bits where you're off the power and you're going through the corners. So stuff to where we should have spent our money instead of tuning the shiznick out the bikes is we should have bought tyres more often. Sticky tyres is just ultimately where it is. You will trash a set of tyres really, really quickly, especially once you start getting quick, and especially if your bike's not set up properly. But tyres is worth a lot every lap, as far as the stopwatch goes. Brakes obviously as well. Which the brakes is, you just got to stay on top of it. Every single time we went out, we cleaned stuff up. You know, it was, and I would go with the OEM discs, not these aftermarket wavy jobbies or any of that stuff. The stock ones were brilliant, but we wasted money going for aftermarket brake discs. We just didn't need to. We should have just stuck with the stock ones. The other thing is suspension. Stock suspension is built to a budget, and it's also built to accommodate everything from an 8-stone dripping wet weakling to a 20-stone heifer that is surprised they make leathers that big. The stock suspension has to be able to deal with all of it. So that is always going to be a compromise. There's loads of aftermarket, you know, you can go with the Olins and the K-Tech and the Nitron and blah 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 blah, but it's worth getting your suspension sorted and going for the aftermarket version purely because it's not built to a budget. Well, the only budget is how much you want to spend on it, basically, because you can get stupidly expensive with that. But once you've got your funky suspension, get it set up properly from someone who knows what he's doing. And then basically go and test it and have a notepad as well. So your setup from one track to another is going to be different. It just is. So what we used to do was we had a notepad and we wrote down every single setting we had, from the tyre pressure to how hot the tyres were with the tyre warmers came off, to the suspension settings front and rear, what the weather conditions were. So was it raining? How hot was it? Was it windy? Was blah blah blah. We had notes on track condition as well. So oil spill on Paddock Hill Bend or whatever it was, or cement dust down here, or so and so crashed right in front of me and spoiled my laptop. We had all sorts of notes down. It's just so that we could build up a bit of a library that we could then go back to and have a look at. Because what you'll find with if you do a full season, you might go back to the same track twice in that year, and it is really hard, especially like the following year. If you are on the same bike, to go, okay, how did we have it set? I'm not really sure. There's quite a lot of guessing goes on. The other thing that we did is loads and loads of track days, just because of that reason. We found that if we was going to be racing at Brands Hatch, normally just before it there would be Bemsee would organise a practice day. So like on the Friday before, they would have a test session there. And literally everybody turned up that was going to be racing at the weekend, just so they could have a go and get the bike set up as good as they could on the track as it was at the time, and blah blah blah. So you're in good stead for when you're racing at the weekend. The other thing we found is quite a lot of tracks come up on a regular basis. So you are going to be racing at Leiden Hill or Brands Hatch or Snetterton most during that year. So if a track day came up and you weren't doing anything, we just used to go on it. If I wasn't racing that weekend, then at the weekend I would be on a track day or on a test session or something. And if I couldn't, then the group of friends that I showed you, they was all just around for a barbecue basically. We just lived, ate and slept and did everything bikes and racing. That was it. Absolutely loved it. And I guarantee it still remains one of the coolest things I've ever done. So if you are thinking about doing it, there's all sorts of stuff you could do. There's stuff like the California Race Bike School, whatever, Superbike School or whatever it is. They'll teach you techniques and they'll show you how to ride a bike quickly and all this sort of stuff. You can go on track days and there'll be oppos there that you can pay to follow you around and critique your riding and help you, with your cornering and all that sort of stuff. Track days tend to have a suspension fella that will bounce up and down and it going, ooh, that's crap, and start tweaking stuff and hopefully make things better for you. There's an awful lot of help around that you can use to try and get yourself and the bike better prepared to go around the track as quickly as possible. And that's one of the things that we didn't really take up on. We should have spent a truckload more time on bike setup and getting new tyres on a regular basis. But instead we just went, I need a quicker lap time. Open the throttle longer and brake harder and all this sort of stuff. No guts, no glory. I'll tell you now, that ends up in A&E quite a lot. What we should have done was a bit more of a structured approach with really working on the setup of the bike and the tyres. They're the two areas that we just failed in. We did tweak things a little bit if something was obviously wrong, because your bike will work at one track but it won't work at another as well. So you do have to tweak stuff and play about with stuff, and as a result you do start learning stuff. However, I wish we'd have learnt that earlier than later. It's worth doing. So that's a little look back in the day. Hopefully it kind of fills in some of the, but it was cool to see that footage again. I'd forgotten some of that day, and to see it, your mind just goes back to it and you can remember the laps. You can remember having a Dodge Martin on his 600 and all this sort of stuff. It is good. So I quite like all that. When we come to doing the SRAD, it is going to be built on a budget, an out and out track bike that we can then use as a test bed, because I've got some other plans beyond that we'll have to use it for. So we are going to cover it. It's just I ain't doing it until Asbo is done and dusted. He's the main thing. So if it is of interest, hopefully you'll follow along with that series. It might help. I don't know. Either way, I'm going to end up with a toy that I can start doing this again. I am going to have to learn an awful lot of it because it's years since I did this. I think I stopped in 2000, 2001, something like that. So it's ages ago. I'm probably going to be like one of the slow fellas again, but I don't care because I'll be on track. So anyway, there you go. I don't really know what else to say. It was dead cool and I'm looking forward to doing it again. I just don't want to crash as much because that really hurt. There's a reason I had morph written on the back of my leathers. It's because every time I fell off I was given diamorphine. I never did that thing where you just slide across the tarmac, stand up and walk off. I was the one cartwheeling into the trees in the background. And that's the worst thing because anything sticking out like hands and legs, they just break. So my nickname turned into Morph. But that's the reason why. So anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it for this one. I've probably bored you enough. If anybody is getting into this, I would love to know how you get on. I really, really would. And at some point when the SRAD is done and we go out on track, it would be really good to meet up with some fellas that's doing it as well. That would be cool. Well, just anyone who fancies a track day, basically. That's all I'm going to start doing. But hopefully it'll all come flooding back. I won't be one of the slow fellas for that long. But we shall see. We shall see. Anyway, that's where I'm leaving it for this one. Thank you ever so much for watching. I do hope you're well and staying safe. We'll see you on the next one. Adios.